Digital Nomad Physician at digitalnomadphysician.com. So you know I had to do this one. So if you're not aware, this is a YouTuber by the name of Investing Doc. I used to actually follow him back in the day when he was when he mostly just did blog posts, and then later I think he switched to doing YouTube videos. So let's get started. Pretty straightforward commentary video dealing with a medical board complaint.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I've been waiting a very long time to finally be able to post this video about the board complaint that I got about 15 months ago, and my opinion, thoughts, and just what it was like to go through my first board complaint.
So that's brutal. Going through a medical board complaint, going through any kind of regulatory complaint like that is a big deal. And the reason he had to wait this long is that when an active ongoing case is happening, if you post about it, that information becomes discoverable and admissible. And unfortunately, even if you post about it after the fact, it can be a problem. Well, let's keep listening.
Follow along, we're going to get into it, and I will tell you my side of the story about what happened and how broken of a process, in my opinion, all of this is. Here we go. All right, for those of you guys who don't know, my name is Brad, own my own private practice, scaled it to 3 locations, on track for about $4 million in revenue this year. This is going to be a quick video. Initially, I have other videos planned, but I decided to quickly edit this one and put it out there because on Christmas Eve, I got a notification that the board is dropping the case against me and all the people in my practice, which was an amazing Christmas gift. So let's circle back. What happened about 15 months ago? Well, there was a gentleman that we ended up seeing who we've been seeing now for about 3.5 years. Now we're in a primary care clinic. We don't diagnose ADHD, but if someone comes with well-documented ADHD treatments in the past and or documentation they had the screening, it's up to the physician's discretion if they're going to take that over or not. We don't do a lot of ADHD.
Let's dive into that a little bit. So he is the owner of multiple different medical practices in primary care, and he's in charge of several different clinicians. And of course, you can't dictate how a physician will practice medicine. You can say that your medical practice is or is not allowed to handle certain medical cases. You can do that. Even then, it's kind of risky to do that. But you cannot dictate how one individual physician can practice medicine. That would be illegal. So if one of his physicians chooses to manage a patient with ADHD, it's their discretion. However, it's important to also point out that if your overall medical practice and your direction is in such a way that you don't handle a lot of those cases, should there be a bad clinical outcome, unfortunately, in a legal case, now this is not a legal case, this is an administrative case where the state medical board has come and said that, hey, we have a problem and we'll find out what the problem is. But if there was a medical malpractice case, if you don't have a lot of those cases that you handle, it might be difficult to defend.
Treatments. So this guy came to our clinic, established care with one of the female physicians about 3.5 years ago, and they ended up bringing all of their psychiatric records going back to I think 2016 about how they were treated with Adderall, same dose, no changes, and everything was going fine. Now keep in mind the time I'm recording this is the end of 2024, so this guy established care around 2021 or so. My partner's been seeing him 3 months.
So this male patient, I don't know if it matters, and this female provider, the male patient has been in their practice for about 3 years, and it looks like they brought their own medical records from 2016 onward. When you are dealing with a patient, any kind of care that they received anywhere in the world is technically, at least in the US legal system, a bit of your responsibility as well, meaning that it's your job to find out where this patient received care and to obtain all those records from all of those facilities, even if the patient brought it from 2016 onward. Unfortunately, when bad things happen, it's not always the patient that holds the string. So the patient can sue if they have a bad outcome. If they pass away or if they have a bad outcome, their loved ones can also sue, and even the district attorney can sue. So it's not necessarily just pleasing the patient. And again, I'm saying all of this not to scare anyone, just to say that this is the way the system works, and there are many ways to run the system so that you don't fall into these kind of issues. And of course, he's done a great job of handling his clinic so far already. Like, hey, bring in your records, let's take a look at everything. So kudos, hats off to this guy already.
3 months, urine drug screens, face-to-face visits, everything has been flying colors. Well, then one day, this gentleman, unfortunately, calls us thinking that Mormons are chasing after him and out to get him, and clearly in a slightly, my opinion, delusional state. Well, with that.
So it sounds like this patient who has had some other psychiatric issues with ADHD, etc., he has now had a psychiatric breakthrough, whether due to certainly previously undiagnosed medical conditions, or possibly due to medication side effects, or due to substance use. Who knows? Let's find out.
That obviously we discontinued any of the Adderall, and we recommended a follow-up visit, to which he basically told us to go F ourselves. However,
so in any kind of acute delusional state, the number one thing to do is to call 911, is to tell the person to go to the emergency room. Stopping any medication, of course, is one thing. Not sure how it relates to this case. I think it's important, of course, to say that, hey, any controlled substances might be a problem in this situation. The proper way to do this is to call 911 for the patient, absolutely for the patient, based on the record they have on your chart, to tell the patient to call 911, to try to reach their loved ones if they have any information like that in the chart. And if that's not an option, to call the local sheriff's department to do a drive-by at the patient's home and to assess them. If the sheriff decides to not to do that, you can simply call an ambulance to go there and say, this is one of my patients. I just got a call from him. I believe he's at this location and he's having a psychiatric episode, acute psychiatric episode.
We did recommend that he go to a psychiatric facility. He did go to that psychiatric facility. He sought treatment, got discharged, and then we tried to get those records. We're mostly unsuccessful, as they did not, for some reason, want to share those records with us, even though we had assigned consent to get those records.
So anybody who's watching this who's not a physician, if you're not familiar with this, as a family medicine doctor, I don't really have access to a patient's psychiatric records, which you might say is ridiculous and absurd. But it is the system that we work in the United States. Even when I was working at Kaiser Permanente, I could not see the therapy for my own patients that I managed. I couldn't see their therapy notes with a therapist or a psychiatrist. One could say that somehow is protecting the patient. One could also say that could really jeopardize the care of the patient if I don't know what they have and don't have, etc. Especially if I'm the one who's taking care of them. And in this situation, this doctor and the practice did a great job. They sent the patient into a psych unit, and the patient got the care that they needed, and they even got discharged.
So this is where things get a little bit weird. We get a bunch of angry voicemails from the patient's mother, super pissed off that we should have seen this coming, that he apparently saw some psychiatrist in like 2010 or maybe.
I like that little weird interaction between some mother and son that he put in there. It's good.
2014, even before the psychiatrist records that we have, that one psychiatrist 14 or 15 years ago gave him a diagnosis of schizophrenia. I had no.
So the patient apparently has been diagnosed with schizophrenia in the past, in 2014, and he had brought records from 2016 onward. Quite understandable if somebody's got a schizophrenia diagnosis, they're not going to want to bring that to their doctor. The patient is at liberty to do that. But of course, there is some due diligence on the clinician's part to be able to unfortunately obtain those records. And that is one of the tough parts of primary care. As they say, once you treat that patient, you own that patient. If you're a patient listening to this, you might say, well, of course, it should be this way. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, and many physicians are choosing not to take care of more complicated patients because the responsibility lies on the doctor, and whatever the patient doesn't share. If I'm going to go to jail, if I'm going to lose my medical license, if I'm going to get sued for something the patient chose not to share with me and I wasn't able to obtain because the psych facility chose not to disclose that to me, then I'm at risk. And the question is, what is the benefit of me taking on that risk? You as a patient listening to this might say, because it's your job, it's your responsibility. Well, my question then is, who's going to hold me accountable to that job and responsibility? Because at the end of the day, I need to make sure that I keep my medical license because I have 2,000, 3,000 other patients that I'm responsible for. If I lose my medical license for one patient, then what good am I to these other patients who would lose their primary care doctor?
No idea. My partner had no idea. And the previous psychiatrist apparently had no idea because we went through all their records, not a single documentation about schizophrenia. Now, in our state, the board complaints are completely anonymous. And I have total respect for the board. So don't think that me complaining about the board directly is any jab at the Board of Medicine.
Now, of course, I wanted to make this video because I've already watched this video, obviously. And I wanted to make this video because the reason he's saying this, I think, I could be wrong, is that there is an inherent fear. The state medical board has all the autonomy over your license. As they say, it is a privilege for you to have a license in our state. And they control everything. And there definitely should be a state medical board that controls physicians, licensure, and makes sure that they're doing things properly. But this level of autonomy, this level of lack of autonomy, and this level of oversight over physicians is the reason this video just came out and how difficult it is for a physician like this to run a practice. And for him to say this statement, this preamble, is really there to be like, hey, if a state medical board watches this, I don't want to lose my medical license. When you think about it, it should be the other way around. He should be able to be as critical of the state medical board as possible. And the state medical board, if they choose to watch something like that, they can say, okay, let me take a look at this. Let's review the information here. What could we have done better? What could we have improved upon? Instead of taking that to heart and then maybe coming and retaliating against this guy.
Listen, they do a wonderful job, and they are there to protect the patients from bad.
You don't know they're doing a wonderful job. That is the unfortunate problem. We don't know the state medical boards are doing a wonderful job. We don't know if they are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is protecting patients, because there isn't enough transparency. But I understand the sentiment.
Bad physicians, bad providers, PAs, NPs, those kind of things. And I'm glad that they exist to protect people from those crazy things. So fast forward, I get a random thing in the mail saying, hey, I'm under investigation for a board complaint for a patient that I've only seen once to refill his medications while my business partner was out on maternity leave. So
it sounds like he has not just employees in his medical practice, he also has business partners. And so when you do cover for another doctor, you essentially are that doctor. Just remember that you are owning that patient and all their consequences and complications. There is no such thing as I wasn't aware of or didn't know. And he knows this and he's saying it very, very well. But he was only one time refilling that patient's medication, and all of a sudden he's getting he's being investigated by the state medical board for, let's find out what.
Saw the guy face to face, everything was fine, refilled the same medication he's been on now for about 6 or 7 years. I didn't think anything of it, passed his drug screen. Actually, we saw him for an annual physical at that point in time. All blood work looked great too, super nice guy. That was probably about 4 months, 5 months before his psychotic episode. So not only do I get a board complaint, every single person in our office gets a board complaint.
So the way the medical board complaint works, if you're a physician and you're not aware of this, is anybody can file a complaint. The top 3 sources of complaints are actually from your fellow clinicians, so a business partner, a competitor, a state medical, a medical group, so for example, your employer, and an insurance company, an insurance group. Finally, after those top 3 comes the patient, and patient's significant others, and then of course there's the disgruntled exes of physicians are also quite common for filing medical board complaints. It's a very easy online platform that you can fill out. You can make it anonymous, you can make it unanonymous. It is an interesting process.
Doesn't matter if they saw this guy or not. Everyone gets a board complaint. Now here's the part about malpractice insurance that really
So the way it works is that because the mother of this person decided to complain about these physicians, all of the physicians in that group apparently, then the board decided that they're going to pick up this complaint, that they're going to just pursue the complaint. And I'm curious about that. I'm curious about how the medical board chose to pursue this and what their internal protocols are, which we don't know about, right? We don't know about their internal protocols because there's no transparency.
It pissed me off that I had no idea about. I guess I should have known it, but I've never had any problems in residency, med school, after graduation. So this is my first time with any run-in with problems.
Not only is it your first time, but this is always going to stay on your record forever. So now you can, from now on, say that I have been investigated by the state medical board. Anytime you renew contracts with insurance companies, you apply for malpractice coverage. Anytime you renew your medical license, especially when you have 50 state medical licenses, all of that is going to require you to mention this from now on, moving forward.
So I call my medical malpractice. I don't call the board right after you get a board complaint. You're supposed to call your malpractice company like I did. And they tell me, you know, Brad, we'll be happy to help you. But by the way, you have a $2,000 deductible. Cool, let's do it. So they set me up with a lawyer that I need to use because they tell me
Before we go further in this, he's basically saying that he contacted his malpractice coverage for this situation. Your malpractice insurance can cover you for administrative stuff, such as state medical board issues. In fact, it usually does. When I was at Kaiser Permanente and I got a medical board complaint filed against me, I had malpractice coverage at Kaiser Permanente. When I contacted Kaiser Permanente, the medical legal department said, it's not in our best interest to represent you, so we're just not going to represent you. So keep in mind that your malpractice insurance may just say that we're not going to cover you. Now, it's much less likely that an independent malpractice insurance company is going to refuse it because you're going to take them to court. But Kaiser Permanente is big enough that they know I have no recourse. I'd have to go hire an attorney, spend $50,000 just to get to the first base with them, and for them to then still deny it and then say, okay, go spend as much on attorneys as you want. We have in-house attorneys, and we're the ones who are covering our own malpractice coverage. We're not afraid of you. They can spend $10 million and I can spend how much? $300,000 at most. And chances are Kaiser Permanente is still going to win. So in this situation, the question is, could this physician and his medical group have just not used their malpractice coverage and just went outside of, just went to an attorney cash? So let's find out, because it sounds like he had to pay $2,000 per physician.
I need to use this lawyer. And shocker, it's $2,000 per provider. So there's 7 providers in our clinic, 4 docs, 3 PAs.
Everybody got reported.
And it's $2,000 per person, even though the complaint is exactly the same. So I had to pay $14,000 for this complaint. And what was the name of the complaint? Is that we should have preventatively put this guy on an antipsychotic and saw his psychotic break coming when his previous psychiatrist didn't see it for 3 years and didn't even know about it. When we've been seeing him for 3.5 years, had no evidence of any paranoia or...
To step back a little bit, unfortunately, you are legally responsible for previous records of a patient. That's pretty much true in any state. I understand his sentiment, and I'm of the same belief that there's only a certain amount of due diligence that I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to the patient and ask them to give me their records. If they choose not to share with me that they had a certain episode, they have the right to do that. But remember, if this went to a legal case, then it would be very different. The court is not going to accept that. A jury is not going to accept that. They're going to say, it's your responsibility, doctor. So in that case, it is a little bit more complicated. And the fact that he's paid $2,000, $14,000 just to be able to fight the state medical board, and the fact that the state medical board filed the case against each and every doctor in the practice, the only way that could make sense is if each and every doctor in that practice prescribed this patient medication, which would be ridiculous, like no way that can happen. It's just shocking. Like, I don't understand that.
Delusions. And that was the board complaint, is that we should have maybe preventatively started this guy on an antipsychotic. And in my opinion, I was kind of ticked off because I was like, who the hell starts someone on an antipsychotic when they show no psychosis, no psychotic behavior, and they simply just come in with a diagnosis of ADHD?
And clinically, this is a very valid argument. If the patient even had a schizophrenic diagnosis many, many years ago, but the patient has no psychosis, has no signs of hallucinations, no delusions, no complications, doing quite well, socially, career-wise, family-wise, there is no reason to even go back and do a psychiatric assessment of on this person for schizophrenia. That's just common sense for a physician.
ADHD, well documented by the previous psychiatrist that we continued. This board complaint happened maybe almost 15 months ago at the time of recording this video. It took 15 months for me to close out this entire complaint. And you may be wondering, My God, does it really take that long? Well, it's a little longer than usual, but
Actually, it's not longer than usual, so he's incorrect. The average medical board complaint is about 3 years. So once you get a complaint from the state medical board, once a case is opened up against you, it can take about 3 years to close it. There are many cases that run much longer than that, and there are some cases that can finish within about a year, but that's rare. Most cases are running 2 to 3 years.
there's something else that I learned along the way is most medical boards will have lawyers. Usually they're new graduates.
Most medical boards do not have new graduate lawyers, so that is incorrect. They usually have a district attorney. If the state is smaller, the district attorney, the assistant district attorney might be sitting on various different panels, but they will, for example, they might cover other administrative jurisdictions, not just medical legal, physician administrative licensure stuff, but they don't have new, unless that state medical board is so poorly run and has such a toxic environment that the attorneys are constantly getting fired or leaving. That is not the case. You do not become a district attorney when you're young. You generally need to put in a few years.
Or they will have lawyers that maybe are part-time or whatever. The problem with this is they're lawyers that are reviewing these cases. It is not supposedly uncommon for there to be high turnover. So we kept getting notified multiple times that the lawyer investigating our case on behalf of the medical board abruptly resigned.
What could be happening in this case is that this state medical board just had no way of hiring anyone. And so what they were doing is they might have been hiring consultant attorneys on these cases, or hiring a legal firm to do the consultation for them. And that legal firm was having multiple attorney turnovers.
And they have to find a new lawyer and assign a new lawyer to our case. And that's what, frankly, I think, in my mind, in my opinion, took 15 months to close this case. Now, I'm so glad that the board ended up going in our favor, but there's one thing. I ended up calling the medical board after calling my malpractice attorney, and I said, I'm just curious, one question. How do you guys determine if you are going to investigate a case or not? Because there's a lot of people.
If you call the state medical board and ask a question like that, you're not going to get a proper answer, because the person who's going to talk to you is not going to have that information. They're not going to understand the exact process of how this works. And the reason I know this is because I know I've dealt with 3 state medical boards for myself, and I consult for physicians who deal with medical board issues like this. And that's just not the way it works. That front desk person, that initial person, is not only going to not share a lot of information with you, they're not going to know a whole lot of stuff. And that person, if anything, is going to have that's a high turnover position. But let's see what the answer was.
People involved in this complaint that had pretty much nothing to do with this guy's case. And they kind of told me, or the person on the phone told me, you know, it's standard for us that if we get a board complaint with multiple providers in the same office, it automatically opens and triggers a deeper investigation.
When a medical board first receives a complaint, they will first assess and see, is this legitimate? Is this valid? Should we even pursue this? So the principal investigator will usually make that determination. They may run it by the state medical board. The state medical board meets 4 times a year, so they might present that case. Oftentimes they don't need to do that. They can just go straight to the district attorney and say, hey, this seems pretty silly. I don't think we need to investigate this. If it's more complicated, they'll do some preliminary research without ever actively opening the case against a physician, or you don't open a case against a medical practice, you open it against a physician. And then they can gather some preliminary data and then choose not to pursue it, or to pursue it, or wait and present it at the next medical board meeting. And then the people on the medical board can choose to then vote whether they want to open it or not. So most cases are actually not pursued, which is really good. Most cases are not pursued, and the cases that are pursued usually have something about them. And in this case, it makes sense. If you're getting multiple physicians who are mentioned, well, I think it's stupid to automatically open a case because of that, because it could be one person who's got a screw loose that's complaining about everyone. But if the complaint is legit, then it's good. The problem is that you don't know who files the complaint. That's the way the administrative process works. It's not like the criminal system. You don't get to face your accuser, and you don't know what the accusation was. And that's kind of a shame, because I think that transparency would actually help everyone.
doesn't matter how frivolous it is. They didn't say that, but in my opinion, I'm adding that in there. Maybe doesn't matter how frivolous it is, like this case, they opened a full-on formal investigation like it happened with us. This person who filed the board complaint either knew or just got lucky in the sense that they filed a board complaint against all of us to where I had to pay $14,000 and the board had to open a full-on formal investigation to question why we didn't preventatively prescribe antipsychotics to this guy. Now, luckily, Christmas Eve today, I finally got a letter saying that my case was completely dismissed and we are good, just like every other provider in our practice. But you know,
So when you get a letter all of a sudden saying that after 15 months of active investigation, your case gets suddenly dropped and you're not being told why it got dropped, the patient, I'm assuming, is not being told why it got dropped, to me, that's a clusterfuck of just poor, disorganized care for patients, for doctors, for the legal system. Because how does that leave you as a patient? First of all, if you're the patient who filed the complaint or you're the patient's family member who filed that complaint, you're like, how do you not take this seriously? I filed the complaint, I want to know why. If you're the physician who had this complaint just randomly dropped against you, then wouldn't you think in your head that like at any time anybody can file a complaint and then I'm going to have another open investigation against me? Where's the closure? Where's the predictability? Where's this concept that we built in America about like, hey, let's have due process. Let's have a predictable system that we can hold people accountable for. That's what we're known for. And of course, we mostly do that. But in the state medical board system, that's not always there. That's all I'm saying. What happened?
You know, this has been hanging over my head for 14 or 15 months now. And every time I get a letter from the board, I'm like, oh my God, hopefully this is it. Nope, my lawyer for the board, or the lawyer resigned to our case for the board, resigned abruptly. And they've got to find us a new lawyer to look over our case. Clearly there's someone triaging this because if there was a more serious threat, the board would have probably come after us a lot sooner. And the fact that it took 15 months, my lawyer just kept emailing me being like, I cannot believe this case is over. Now, when I talked to our lawyer, I said, is there anything else that I should be doing? And she said, you know, if there's a legitimate board complaint here, let's say that there's sexual assault allegations or something like that, or a severe standard of care deviation, then they recommend hiring some sort of third party to say, you know what, no, I am a psychiatrist and I agree with their diagnosis and this treatment, X, Y, and Z.
That's not really the way it works. Actually, the way it works is that if the board does come after you and they say that you're not allowed to, you're requested for a hearing, then you would go with your attorney to that hearing. During that hearing, they're going to get some preliminary information. And then the next step in the hearing might be that you petition to go in front of an administrative law judge, where yes, you can bring in some experts to testify, or you can get a virtual testifyingness. I don't know. And then you can present that, or the administrative law judge can hear that. Sometimes the state medical board will hear that, but by then they've already given you some sort of stipulated agreement that they want you to sign to lose your medical license, to suspend you, to prevent you from prescribing anything, to give you a whole lot of shit on your public record that's going to make you look bad. So it's a little bit more complicated than that.
But the point I'm trying to highlight is that, again, have so much respect for the board, but man, this whole case, honestly,
you don't need to have respect for the board. That's the whole point. Like, you don't have to have any respect for the state medical board. You don't have to have disrespect for the state medical board. The state medical board is doing their job. Like, I have so much respect for my electronic health record. I mean, I love Epic, and Epic is great and all, but no, like, there's no reason for you to have to excuse or justify if the state medical board is not running the way they should. And of course, I'm not saying they're running bad, by the way. I'm just saying that I've heard this so many times from so many doctors who are going through state medical board processes, including myself, that it's just, there's no transparency, there's no concept, there's no logic, there's no like prediction of like, where is this going to go? Who's really investigating me? What's really happening? So no, you don't need to stand up for them. And of course, the only reason you need to do that is if you need to keep your medical license. I understand that, but living under the fear of Big Brother in 2024 in America, I don't know.
honestly soured me to the point where I think I'm probably going to practice a lot more defensively.
So, if you're a patient listening to this, do you want your doctor to practice defensive medicine? What is defensive medicine? When you come into my primary care clinic and you say, hey, I've been having a little bit of twinges here on my chest. I don't think it's a big deal, but I'm kind of worried. I wanted you to check me out. Okay. Well, we're going to send you to the ER. Well, really, why can't you just get an EKG and maybe do a troponin? I don't know. This happened to me once before, and that's all they did, and then they send me home. Nope, sorry, we're just going to send you to the ER because I'm not going to take the risk. I'm going to practice defensive medicine. Patient who is 24 years old, just starting graduate school, and maybe they do have some mild ADD or ADHD or other type of issues that requires medications for attention. And you're like, nope, we don't prescribe any such medications. Really, I've been part of your practice since I was a teenager, and like, you guys are not going to handle that. You're going to send me to a psychiatrist. It's going to be so expensive for me. They're not even going to see me for another 3 months. Why can't you just manage that? Like, I literally need like 30 pills for 6 months. I just need to take it a few days out of the week for me to be able to function. And you say no, because that's defensive medicine. That is often the side effect of these kind of bullying behavior by these administrative entities.
In the future. Now, how am I going to practice more defensively? Well, one, I'm going to definitely make sure that I end up documenting things to where I can say no evidence of psychosis, patient, totally appropriate, whatever. I'll add some other language in there. Luckily, our documentation for this guy was just crisp. It was amazing. Everything was to the T. Nothing was missing. It was easy from our lawyer standpoint to say there's nothing going to happen with this. But it's also changed us in the sense that I hate doing ADHD treatment because sometimes patients can be very aggressive, very demanding. And when I talk to our lawyer, most of the board complaints outside of surgical things, especially aesthetics medicine, a lot of it is around either payments or controlled substances. Those are the big board complaints.
I think he said pain meds. I heard payments, but I think it's pain meds. And or maybe not. Maybe it is payments, but it is true. It is true that a lot of controlled substances, pain medications, and anxiety medications and ADHD medications unfortunately fall into this realm of creating a rift between the patient and the doctor. And it doesn't need to be that way. Controlled substances are inherently dangerous. The reason we don't have it over the counter and the reason it is controlled is so that we can control who we give it to. And we do a good job as physicians trying our best to make sure that the right people are getting it. And if there's a genuine concern that a patient or a physician is giving out way too many controlled substances, it is a very easy thing to do. The investigator for the state medical board can look up Mohammed Ashori MD on the many different sites that are out there that can see how many controlled substances he gives. And if they see that he only gives it to this one person, nobody else, or maybe 10 people, and he hardly prescribes any other controlled medicines, and he's been giving the same 30 Adderalls to this patient, never escalating the dosages, what are you investigating? I mean, tell me what you're investigating, because I don't know. I mean, I'm a doctor and I don't understand what you're investigating. I understand the part about psychosis, and if you believe that I should have screened this patient for psychosis, you need to prove that I should have done that. You, the state medical board, need to prove that I should have done that, not the other way around. You can't open an investigation and say you prove that you're innocent. And unfortunately, that is the way administrative works. You are guilty until you can prove your innocence. And I just don't think that's helping our patients. That's what we're all here for, to help our patients. And secondarily, to protect physicians in their careers and prevent them from burning out, right?
I'm happy that the board exists. If you are on the board, I have no ill will towards you at all. But man, it sucked to have a case like this hanging over my head for 15 months where the board could just stripe my license away if they wanted to, all because I didn't preventatively potentially prescribe an antipsychotic to a guy who for the last 6+ years has had no evidence of psychosis, and supposedly someone gave the medical board records from 2014 or 2010, long before us or the previous psychiatrist knew about it, that this guy had one diagnosis from one provider potentially of schizophrenia. All right.
Yeah, that's tough. Again, I'm not going to say anything else. I hope this is a good thing for you guys to understand. Yes, we need state medical boards. Yes, we need an important regulated patient-doctor relationship. Yes, patients should have a way out to be able to file complaints against doctors, but we need a more transparent system. We need a system that's designed around open communication, open access to information. And if I'm a family medicine doctor and I can't get a hold of your records, that's a problem of interoperability. And the fact that with 20, 30 years after we rolled out electronic records, we're still not able to access information, much less the fact that me as a family medicine doctor, I can't even access my patient's psych information. This is a broken concept, not a broken system. It's a broken concept within the system. And if we can fix that, I think most doctors are probably going to try to do good. If you want to catch the one pedophile or the one doctor who's diverting controlled substances to make extra money, that's not that difficult to do if you focus on those doctors. But if you're also focusing on all this other stuff, it's going to create a whole lot of problems, in my opinion, and it's not really going to do well. Anyway, I'll shut up now. That's it. I hope this was helpful, guys. Leave some comments below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what could have done, what I could have said better, what other information I could have added. Take care.